I want you to imagine something with me. Picture a garden, lush and vibrant, every flower reaching for the sun, every vine climbing tirelessly up the trellis. You are in this garden, and you notice a particular plant. Let's call it your kindness. You water it, you nurture it, you tend to it every single day. You protect it from pests, shield it from storms, even go out of your way to give it the richest soil. And yet, when you look around, you notice that some of the plants around you, the ones that have not been nurtured as thoughtfully, receive more admiration. Strangers and even friends are plucking their flowers, praising their blooms, while your plant, your labor of love, goes unnoticed. And suddenly, the question hits you, why do I give so much, and yet, why am I overlooked? Here's the reality: the world does not value what is free. Think about that for a moment. Consider how humans are wired, not just by culture, but by instinct. We instinctively value what requires effort, what comes at a cost, when someone has to climb a mountain to earn something, when someone has to fight for it. We look at it differently. It carries weight, it carries meaning, and your generosity, your relentless kindness, when given without any boundaries, without any reciprocity, becomes invisible. It blends into the background like wallpaper, important only when it's absent, unnoticed when it's constant. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am not saying that you should become cruel or manipulative, nor that generosity itself is bad. Generosity is a gift, but there is a distinction, a subtle, yet crucial distinction between generosity that empowers and generosity that diminishes your own presence. The moment your kindness becomes a constant, a thing that never demands anything in return, it loses its power. It loses its presence. You are, in effect, offering your value away for free, and people rarely treasure what comes without effort. Let me give you a story, because stories carry truth in ways that abstract statements never can. There was a young agent I once met early in her career who was relentlessly nice to everyone. She said yes to every request, answered every call, helped everyone solve every problem. She was exhausted, but she believed that being liked equaled being respected. And what happened? People took her for granted. They leaned on her, expected her to be available at all hours, and the very people whose respect she sought, her peers, her superiors, treated her like a resource, not a person. Her heart was open, yes, but her boundaries were not. Her generosity became a liability because it was unmeasured, uncontrolled, and unreciprocated. Contrast that with someone else I knew, a colleague with a reputation for being selective, deliberate, and firm in their interactions. This person did not say yes to every request, did not give their time indiscriminately, and yes, they could be perceived as cold at first. But the result? Their presence became valuable. When they spoke, people listened. When they offered help, it was meaningful, impactful. People appreciated it because it required effort, because it wasn't automatic. Theirs was a kindness earned, not assumed. This is not just professional advice, it is psychological truth. Our brains are wired to assign value based on scarcity and effort. If you have ever given something away for free, only to see it ignored or taken for granted, you understand the sting. It is not just disappointment, it is a lesson etched into our limbic system, a lesson about human nature. Nothing of true value is truly appreciated when it comes too easily. And yet so many of us continue to offer our hearts, our time, our energy freely, assuming that being good will automatically inspire respect. It rarely does. And here's the difficult part. The world is not obliged to reward goodness. Respect, admiration, and even love are things that must be earned, both by others and by oneself. So what do we do with this truth? How do we navigate a world that so often mistakes our kindness for weakness? First, recognize that your value is not in how much you give. It is in how wisely you give. Think of your energy as a form of currency. When you hand it out indiscriminately, it loses its purchasing power. When you reserve it, when you choose carefully who to invest in, every gesture carries weight. Every word, every action becomes meaningful, and the people around you, your friends, colleagues, even strangers, begin to recognize it not as entitlement but as a gift. There is power in being selective, power in saying no, power in holding your energy like a treasure, not because you are selfish, but because you understand the laws of human psychology. When kindness is abundant without boundaries, it becomes background noise. When it is rare, measured, intentional, it becomes signal. It commands attention, it commands respect. And the beautiful paradox? Those who truly matter, the ones whose opinions, whose trust, whose companionship is worth having, will seek it out, and they will value it far more than the masses ever could. Consider also the metaphor of the ocean. A wave that rises and falls indiscriminately blends into the surface unnoticed, its energy dissipated in the vastness. But a wave that rises deliberately, gathers strength, and crashes with purpose, that wave shapes the shore. That wave commands notice. Your kindness, when given with intention, can be like that purposeful wave. It does not deplete your essence. It does not leave you adrift. It carries impact. It shapes the world around you without leaving you exhausted, without leaving you invisible. And here is the final, subtle truth. Being overly nice often comes from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict. The more you protect your energy, the more your energy matters. Respect is drawn not from mere friendliness, but from measured engagement. Let me share another story. There was a woman I worked with, let's call her Sarah. Sarah had a natural tendency to please. Early in her career, she accepted every request, every task, every invitation, believing that by being liked, she would be respected. But the reality was different. She was overworked, underappreciated, and often overlooked. Then, slowly, she began to experiment. She started saying no to requests that drained her without purpose. She prioritized her commitments, her projects, and her time. And what happened? People began to notice. Her no's were not empty, they were deliberate. Her yeses were no longer automatic. They were earned, intentional, and impactful. Suddenly, her colleagues sought her input. They valued her presence. They appreciated her generosity because it was meaningful, not infinite. This is the heart of the lesson. Respect, admiration, and influence are drawn to scarcity, effort, and intention. Overly nice behavior, constant acquiescence, and unmeasured giving, by contrast, can create a dangerous illusion of availability that erodes your influence and diminishes your presence. We confuse kindness with weakness, availability with worth. We convince ourselves that the more we give, the more we will be valued. Yet, often the opposite occurs. Think about human psychology in terms of leverage. Every action you take, every word you speak, carries potential energy. If you disperse this energy indiscriminately, it loses potency. If you concentrate it, direct it, and reserve it for moments that matter, it becomes transformative. Your gestures gain weight. Your attention becomes precious. And when people recognize this, they no longer take you for granted. They earn you. And here is the beautiful symmetry. You preserve your energy for those worthy of it, and they learn to value it. Now, this is not a call to cynicism. It is not an instruction to armor yourself with indifference. Human beings crave connection. We thrive on empathy and generosity. But the key is discernment. We must ask ourselves constantly, who deserves my energy? Who will appreciate it? Who will meet it with reciprocity rather than entitlement? Because indiscriminate kindness does not inspire gratitude, it fosters expectation. And expectation is the silent thief of respect. Let me offer a metaphor to deepen this understanding. Picture a candle. Its flame is your spirit, your energy, your kindness. You can give light to the world, illuminate paths, warm hearts. But if you let every hand take a flame, if you burn yourself out for the sake of endless approval, the candle will sputter, flicker, and eventually extinguish. But if you give selectively, intentionally, with thought and care, the flame endures. It shines brightly, drawing people toward it. It becomes a guide, not a resource to be depleted. There is also a subtle, almost poetic truth about power and respect. Humans do not respect that which is always present. They do not value what costs nothing. The rare gesture, the measured kindness, the intentional effort. These are the things that leave a mark. Imagine someone who always says yes. Their yes becomes a whisper, a faint echo drowned in expectation. But someone who says yes sparingly, who invests themselves with purpose, every yes becomes a statement. Every gesture resonates. Every act carries meaning. And respect, admiration, and even love follow resonance. They follow presence. They follow scarcity and intentionality. The challenge, of course, is internal. It is not easy to resist the urge to please. It is not easy to curb the instinct to give freely, to be liked, to avoid conflict. But consider this, when you give endlessly without boundaries, you are often operating from fear. The fear of rejection, of being overlooked, of being undervalued, and the irony, that very behavior often guarantees the outcome you fear. You are ignored, taken for granted, undervalued. The path to influence, to respect, to genuine connection, lies not in fear-driven generosity, but in thoughtful, deliberate, empowered generosity. And here is a final reflection on the human condition. The world is full of people who take without earning, who assume rather than seek, who expect rather than value. To navigate such a world, you must cultivate self-respect, clarity, and discernment. You must recognize that your energy is precious, your kindness is powerful, and your presence is meaningful, but only when wielded with intention. You must learn to say no without guilt, to reserve your time without shame, to give without expectation, and to love without surrendering your essence. It is a delicate balance, a dance between generosity and self-preservation, between connection and self-respect. But when you master it, something remarkable occurs. People begin to notice. They begin to respect. They begin to meet you on your terms. They begin to earn the generosity you have cultivated. And in that space, your energy, your kindness, your presence becomes something rare and profound, something that shapes lives, not simply fills them. Now, let's step even further into the subtle mechanics of influence and human perception, because here is a truth that often goes unspoken. People rarely value what they do not earn. And when you offer your time, your attention, your kindness freely, without reservation, without conditions, you remove the opportunity for others to engage in the essential work of respect. They do not struggle to reach you. They do not climb toward your trust. They do not prove that they are worthy of your generosity. And that lack of effort, that absence of earned engagement, dulls the impact of everything you offer. Think of trust and respect as a mountain. It is not a gentle hill that anyone can walk over. It is a towering peak, and every act of effort, every gesture of integrity, every boundary you enforce, is a foothold on that climb. When you give indiscriminately, when you say yes automatically, when your kindness flows without intention, you are handing the summit to anyone willing to step on your shoulders. You are diluting the value of the mountain itself. But when you give selectively, you invite others to earn their place. You ask them to climb, to demonstrate commitment, to prove that they are worthy of standing beside you. And when they succeed, the respect they show is not fleeting. It is carved in stone. Let's bring this down to the everyday, to the reality of human interactions. Perhaps a friend calls repeatedly, expecting your attention regardless of your own obligations. Perhaps a colleague leans on your expertise without ever returning the favor. Perhaps a family member takes your patience for granted, assuming that it is infinite. It is tempting in those moments to acquiesce, to say yes out of habit, or guilt, or fear. But each automatic yes chips away at your power. Each overextended moment diminishes the resonance of your presence. It is here, in these small, repeated acts, that the real test lies, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments of choice. Will you give freely without thought, or will you give with intention, preserving the sacredness of your energy? This is where the internal transformation begins. It begins with self-awareness, an honest reckoning with the ways you have allowed yourself to be taken for granted. It begins with recognition that your kindness is a form of currency, and currency must be managed wisely. And it requires courage, because society often mislabels restraint as coldness, selectivity as selfishness, and boundaries as cruelty. But understand this, strength and respect are never born from endless concession. They are born from disciplined generosity, from measured kindness, from a presence that is deliberate and undeniable. Here is another story, drawn from the threads of reality I have witnessed. There was a man I mentored, a young agent with extraordinary empathy, who had a habit of giving himself away. He would take on assignments for others, cover shifts, offer advice, lend his resources, without hesitation, without consideration. At first his generosity earned smiles, gratitude, even admiration. But over time, he began to notice a pattern. The gratitude faded, the smiles became expectation, and the admiration vanished. People assumed he would always be there, always available. Then, in a deliberate shift, he began to practice measured giving. He set limits, said no where appropriate, and made his assistance intentional. Suddenly, people sought him out, valued his input, and treated his time as precious. He learned the critical lesson. The value of your generosity is inseparable from the effort required to earn it. And this brings us to a deeper philosophical insight. Life in many ways is a series of exchanges. Energy exchange for respect, time exchange for trust, presence exchange for connection. If you give freely without intention, you are creating an imbalance, an energy deficit that can leave you depleted, unnoticed, unappreciated. But if you give wisely, with awareness, you restore balance. You create a dynamic where respect and admiration must be earned. You reclaim your power. You signal to the world that your presence, your attention, your kindness are not commodities, they are gifts. Consider, too, the emotional resonance of scarcity. Humans are instinctively drawn to that which is rare. A diamond glimmers because it is scarce. A flame burns brightly because it is nurtured, protected, and intentional. Your kindness, your generosity, your attention, when offered indiscriminately, becomes common. When offered intentionally, it becomes extraordinary. And here lies the poetic truth. The very same kindness that may have once left you unnoticed can, when wielded with intention, command the room, influence hearts, and inspire genuine respect. So, how do we cultivate this intentional generosity? How do we shift from being overly nice to being consciously powerful in our interactions? It begins with 3 principles: clarity, boundaries, and discernment. Clarity, knowing what you value, what you will allow, and what you will not. Boundaries, defining the space in which your energy can be engaged, protecting your reserves, and refusing to give where it is unearned. And discernment, choosing wisely who deserves your effort, your attention, and your kindness. It is not about building walls. It is not about detachment. It is about constructing a framework that ensures your generosity carries meaning. Imagine a lighthouse, tall and steady, its beam cutting through darkness. It does not bend to every storm. It does not illuminate every inch of coastline indiscriminately. Yet, when its light shines on those who navigate the waters, it guides, protects, and transforms. Your measured generosity can be like that lighthouse, focused, powerful, and respected. And here is the final meditation. When you stop being overly nice, when you stop giving without intention, you do not become cold, you become alive. You do not become distant, you become magnetic. You do not withhold kindness, you give it weight, resonance, and impact. The world will not automatically honor your goodness. You must teach it, model it, and enforce it. And when you do, a transformation occurs not only in the way people treat you, but in the way you treat yourself. You learn that your energy, your time, your spirit are sacred. You learn that respect is earned, admiration is cultivated, and kindness is powerful when it carries intention. Let us now step into the terrain of relationships, those complex, unpredictable landscapes where our generosity is tested most. Relationships, in their purest form, are meant to be reciprocal. They are a dance of energy, a weaving of trust and care. But when we are overly nice, when our generosity flows without measure, the dance becomes one-sided. You lead without pause, without question, and the other steps follow as expectation rather than choice. And slowly, imperceptibly, your presence loses its gravity. You are no longer someone whose kindness is meaningful. You become a fixture, an automatic participant, and the natural human desire to earn what is precious fades into complacency. This is why discernment is not just strategic, it is moral. It is the responsibility we have to ourselves to ensure that the people in our lives value us as much as we value them. Consider your energy, your time, your attention as a kind of currency. Not in the cold sense of transactions, but in the sacred sense of what is invested. When you give endlessly without expectation, you invite devaluation. When you give selectively, thoughtfully, intentionally, you invite respect, appreciation, and effort in return. And here is a truth too few confront. Not everyone is willing or capable of earning your presence. Some will take it for granted. Some will leave without giving anything back. And that is not a reflection on you, it is a reflection on them. There will be guilt. There will always be guilt. The hardest part of this transformation is that our instincts, nurtured since childhood, have taught us that saying no is selfish, that withholding our attention is cruel, that generosity must be limitless. We fear judgment, the frown of disapproval, the whispered critique of those who believe that kindness is synonymous with availability. But let me tell you something, guilt is not a compass, it is a fog. It clouds your judgment, diminishes your energy, and convinces you to give away what is precious. True generosity does not reside in guilt-driven actions, it resides in deliberate, conscious choice. Let me share another story, because life's lessons are always clearest in narrative. There was a man named David, a quiet, empathetic soul who had a habit of overextending himself for friends and colleagues. When he tried to assert boundaries, he felt the familiar pangs of guilt. Am I being selfish, he asked? Am I abandoning them? But slowly he learned to distinguish between selflessness and self-erasure. He began to prioritize interactions where his presence was valued, where his efforts were reciprocated, and where his kindness made an impact. The first few times he said no, there was discomfort, unease, a shadow of guilt. But then, something remarkable happened. People began to respect him more. They sought him out not because he was always available, but because his presence had become rare, meaningful, and deliberate. His energy was no longer scattered, it was concentrated, powerful, and magnetic. This is the subtle alchemy of respect. Scarcity transforms ordinary gestures into extraordinary ones. When your attention is precious, people begin to earn it. When your time is measured, it is treasured. When your energy is intentional, it becomes transformative. Overly nice behavior, by contrast, leaves you depleted, invisible, and misunderstood. The world rarely honors boundless generosity. It honors earned generosity. And this is not a cynical view of humanity. It is a recognition of reality. To survive, to thrive, to command respect, we must learn to give in a way that carries weight. Now, there is a temptation to fear this transformation. To worry that saying no will alienate, that drawing boundaries will push people away, that measured kindness will be mistaken for coldness. But the paradox is profound. When you give with intention, the right people are drawn to you. They are the ones who value, who respect, who reciprocate. Those who do not, those who seek to exploit or take without effort, are revealed for what they are, and it is better to know this sooner than later. Better to recognize who deserves your generosity than to waste your energy on those who will not value it. Let's consider the metaphor of the forest. Every tree reaches for sunlight, every root seeks nourishment. Some plants thrive in the shared space, supporting each other, creating balance. Others take relentlessly, choking the life around them. If you allow your kindness to be the soil for every plant indiscriminately, you risk being drained, overtaken, unseen. But if you cultivate selectively, nurturing those who grow in harmony with your energy, your influence spreads like a healthy, enduring forest. Your generosity bears fruit, your presence shapes the ecosystem. And finally, this brings us to the quiet, meditative truth. The world does not owe you respect. It does not owe you admiration. It does not owe you recognition for your endless kindness. These things must be earned, both by others and by yourself, by choosing who deserves your energy, by reserving your attention for those who meet it with effort, by giving with intention rather than obligation. You reclaim your power. You teach the world how to treat you. And in that space, your life, and no, delivered intentionally, does not close doors. It defines your space. It signals that your energy is precious, that your presence is not infinite, and that respect is not automatic, it is earned. Consider also the power of reflection at the end of each day. Ask yourself, where did I give with intention? Where did I give freely without meaning? How did people respond? How did I feel? Reflection is the compass that guides us. It reveals patterns, exposes areas where our generosity is taken for granted, and illuminates opportunities to reclaim our energy. It teaches us that boundaries are not constraints. They are tools for shaping a life of impact, influence, and respect. Another crucial practice is the cultivation of selective empathy. Empathy is not a limitless resource. It is not a force to be expended on every demand, every plea, every expectation. It is a refined, precious capacity that carries power when focused. Choose carefully where your empathy flows. Engage with those who reciprocate, who show effort, who demonstrate genuine care. Your compassion, like a flame, must be preserved to illuminate the paths that matter most. Scatter it indiscriminately, and it flickers weakly. Channel it intentionally, and it becomes transformative. And finally, understand that this is a lifelong practice. You will falter. You will slip into old habits. You will give too freely, too quickly, and sometimes feel the familiar sting of being undervalued. But the difference now is awareness, reflection, and deliberate action. Each choice, each pause, each measured act of kindness reinforces the architecture of respect around your life. Slowly, imperceptibly, your presence gains gravity. Your gestures resonate. Your kindness becomes extraordinary, not because it is abundant, but because it is intentional. Let us close